Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to Procrastinate with Books. In today's episode, we are going to cover a brand new series. It's not brand new as in released in this year, but it has been launched in recently, and I've been hearing about this series forever and ever. I'm talking about none other than Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. The author has also written the Caraval series, which is another yet acclaimed fantasy great series. So we'll be diving into this one for right now, and I purposely read these books because I was getting so much hype all around Bookstore on these three books. Plus, Fairy Loot also came around with a beautiful exclusive edition of the series, and people were saying it's so beautiful, the story is magical, it has a fairy tale kind of a retelling structure. So I thought, why not? Let's dive in. Now, I'll try to keep the video spoiler free for the first section itself, where I list out the blurbs of all the three books so that people who are anticipating to read this book, maybe going forward, you can still read it without much spoilers. But for people who have already read it or are either okay with the spoiler version, dive in further through the video and watch it till the end, because we are going to do a deep dive assessment of the characters, plot holes, and everything that makes this book a yay or a nay. The plotline of Once Upon a Broken Heart is that Evangeline has finally discovered that the person she loves so much and was about to marry is now marrying someone else entirely, and has had a change of heart in the brink of just few days. And now she's praying to the gods so that he doesn't actually marry the other person and comes back to her. But she started praying to the wrong gods and she ended up making a deal with the devil. So that's about the plotline. And now she owes three debts to the devil that she'll have to give back to him as and when requested, and that's where this whole storyline is there. Now, from a reader's perspective, I initially thought I would be DNFing this book right around from 30 to 31 pages. I was that far and I was just about to DNF because it was getting a little smutty, because the whole discussion was simply around kisses and whom to kiss and what kind of kiss and blah 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 sort of thing, and it wasn't just really my jam. But since people said it's magical and it has fairy tale elements into it, I kept on reading, and after 50% of the book, the patience did pay off, because I was starting to get into the series after that. Before that, it was a pretty okay read for me. All in all, I think I would give this book a 3 stars, considering all the elements of borrowed fairy tale related sections that were introduced in here, and the plot was also a bit iffish, especially the pacing. So that's all right. Second book, Ballad of Never After, follows an after story of the first part, where now Evangeline has a bit of a clue of what she can do. She understands her powers better and what she's capable of. She has also understood that Jack is not really the person that you should either be friends with or either be enemies with. Either of them is really harmful for you, and now she's decided mentally that she has to stay away from him as much as possible. But then she gets married to an ex-person in the first book towards the end, and now that person is cursed again, and now the only way to break that curse is seeking Jack's assistance and collaborating with him in his affairs and going ahead with that. There is a slight twisted way of putting frenemies concept in there, but also enemies to lovers with a forced proximity sort of a setting that actually intrigues readers to go on with this book. I also enjoyed that there were multiple plot twists throughout the book, and personally speaking, out of all the three books, I think this book had the best writing style. There were least amount of plot holes in here. I think the overall pacing was also good, and I personally liked this one very well. Now, something really terrible happens at the end of book 2, and it ends on sort of a cliffhanger, and I was really agitated by it, and I immediately had to know what's going to happen next and in which direction the story is going. I think that was very essential for any reader. I'm sure nobody who has read book 2 would have stopped until they have also read book 3. That's the kind of plot line, and it was pretty intriguing to see how things have changed so fast because of the way things ended in book 2, and now following a new life of Evangeline where she has no clue of her past, at least not of the recent past and everything that has just happened. And now she's trying to figure things out, but her husband keeps insisting that it's all for the good and it's just going to be fine. But there's this inner voice inside her that really can't let go, and thank God she doesn't let go, and the whole plot moves in the right direction, because by the third book I had started rooting up for Jack as much as the evil character he's playing. I think his character is twisted up morally in a grayish form, and it's constructed so beautifully that you would end up rooting for a happy ending just for the sake of Jack. I don't really care that much for Evangeline or even his husband and everything that's happening around, but for Jack, I really want something good to happen. Now, by now, you must have already understood that when I talk about characters, Jack was my favorite character, considering how beautifully he was constructed. Evangeline was a bit on and off. At sometimes you would tune in with her, really like her character and the way she stood for herself and refused to give up, irrespective of who was trying to control her. That portion was something that I really enjoyed. But then there were also some stubborn moments where you would simply be like, why doesn't she just understand what's going on and stop being an ass? Those sorts of elements just downgraded her character a bit to me, and Jack was at the top of the list. Like, his evilness was so beautifully portrayed. I think if one has to simply read the series for Jack's character and get to know him, that would be enough. The rest of it can be ignored, but his character and the way he twisted things, the way dialogues were given to him, I think they were just so beautiful. Second thing that I enjoyed the most while reading this book were the punchlines that were delivered from left, right, and center. I think book one did certainly have more punchlines as compared to book two, which has more plot twist, and book three was a complete closure, but there were a little bit of plot holes, I would say, considering few instances. And without spoiling it much for you guys, I think the way she is not able to grasp what is happening in the book three makes me agitated, and the way simply by the touch of Jack she is starting to remember but not by the touch of her husband is a little controversial, because touches affect people the same way, but it is also possible that her emotional connectivity to one person would be different from the other person, and that's why there is this whole differentiation shown within the census system. I think the side characters were developed way enough for you to carry through the story, but not enough for them to embark a mark upon you while reading them, because there wasn't a single side character that I was really rooting for. Unlike in Grishaverse, you have Zoya, who is partially good, partially bad, but you really root for her throughout the series. You really want to see her side and her point of views as well, which does not happen in this book. I think this series, the characters were on the side, especially pretty stubble. You won't hate them or love them with the same intensity. Now, something that absolutely did not work for me in this series was the first chapter, because if a book actually gives you DNF vibes, at least that particular book will never scale up to be the most enjoyable thing of that series. I think it's all thanks to book two that I actually got into the whole series and kept on reading it. But book one, I think rewriting the first chapter a little differently would probably entertain more readers and get them into reading this series as well. And that was about it from my end for the whole Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I think it does break your heart in the end of book two, but otherwise, it's a good read. It definitely did have those magical elements into it that people were talking about, but I don't see the overhype, especially related to book one, around it. That's the least favorite of the three books that I read. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to also try the Caraval series by the same author, and let you know my thoughts on it as well. And I'll catch up with you in my next video. Until then, keep your coffee strong and your TBRs long. Goodbye!